And so if we are giving our consideration to it, and I definitely am, then the end result is going to be quite spectacular in regard to the extent of calamity in the world. And so I'll read another scripture which speaks to the ongoing rage going forth. It doesn't all happen on one day, but it's a continual, ongoing rage that culminates in an enormous earthquake where every city falls, and hailstorms with hailstones of an incredible size. So I'll read that scripture. Scripture is also in Jeremiah, and this time it's in chapter 30 and verse 23. Listen carefully to what it says. Look, a windstorm of Jehovah, rage itself, has gone forth. An onward sweeping tempest. Upon the head of the wicked ones it will whirl. So that's the scripture. But notice that it says it's an onward sweeping tempest. In other words, it does not occur all on one day, but it continually goes forth amongst all the nations until it reaches the point where people no longer give it their consideration because they are absolutely convinced that it's God's rage going forth. And so, think about it. Are you giving this your consideration? Because if this is indeed the start of God's rage going forth, eventually your consideration will be turned into a conviction. Now, there may be people objecting to what I'm saying, and their objection will be, well, hey, there's always been calamities in the world. Name a point in history where there wasn't. But then I'd ask those people to consider what's happened so far in the 21st century, and then especially what's happened since the beginning of this year, 2010. And so I'll read off a quick list that I made about the kind of calamities that have happened in 2010. Please, in the comments below, mention anything that I might have missed. So here we go. And so earlier in the year, after the Haitian earthquake and the Icelandic volcano, I kept asking myself, what next? Sure enough, another calamity occurred. And so I'd ask myself the same question, what next? And I was never disappointed. There was always another calamity to follow the one that horrified me in the first place. So, are you giving your consideration to that? I certainly am. Snowmageddon in the USA. Yes, Obama called it Snowmageddon because there was so much snow. Haiti, earthquake. Iceland, volcano. Earthquakes in China. Heat waves in India and Pakistan. A state of emergency in Jamaica. Earthquake and tsunami in Chile. Oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico. Super heat wave in Russia. Forest fires in Russia as well. A wheat crop failure in Russia. Forest fires in British Columbia. Too much rain for the Canadian wheat and not enough rain for the USA wheat. Battleship torpedoed South Korea. Floods in Canada. Oil spill in China as well. Floods in Pakistan. Hurricane in Mexico. Floods and landslides in China. Cholera in Haiti. Guatemala, volcano. Guatemala floods. Typhoon in Taiwan, Philippines, and China. Economic crisis and riots in Greece. Earthquake in New Zealand. Food riots in Mozambique. Toxic sludge in Hungary. Economic crisis and riots in France. Earthquake and tsunami in Indonesia. Volcano in the Philippines. And right now we have a hurricane headed towards Haiti and Jamaica. So, did I miss anything? Is that more than usual? I believe so. I'm giving my consideration to it. Are you? Now, there is some good news in regards to this windstorm, the rage of God going forth throughout the entire world. And this is mentioned in the book of Revelation in chapter 7. And so I'll read the scripture to you. It's in chapter 7, starting in verse 1. Listen carefully. This is good news in regards to considering that this is God's rage now going forth, a windstorm. After this, I saw 4 angels standing upon the 4 corners of the earth, holding tight the 4 winds, the windstorm, of the earth, that no wind might blow upon the earth, or upon the sea, or upon any tree. And I saw another angel ascending from the sun rising, having a seal of the living God. And he cried with a loud voice to the 4 angels, to whom it was granted to harm the earth and the sea, saying, Do not harm the earth or the sea or the trees until after we have sealed the slaves of our God in their foreheads. So think carefully about that scripture and perhaps pick up your own Bible and read it yourself. If we have given our consideration to what's happening in the world, and it is indeed that windstorm going forth that the 4 angels are asked to perpetrate, so this is divine, then the slaves of God have already been sealed. It's a done deal. So the expectation then after that is that the entire world will suffer a calamity. And so will there be anyone left? Well, in chapter 7 of Revelation, it does indeed tell us who will be left. And so I'll read that scripture. Listen carefully to what it's Revelation chapter 7, and I'll start in verse 14. So right away I said to him, My Lord, you are the one that knows. And he said to me, These are the ones that come out of the great tribulation. And they have washed their robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb. That is why they are before the throne of God, and they are rendering him sacred service day and night in his temple. So who is this Lamb? It's Jesus Christ. And how do you wash your robes in his blood? You do what he said in the Bible. If you're really concerned, then you should probably read his Sermon on the Mount and measure very carefully what he said and determine if you are indeed doing that. If you are doing exactly what Jesus Christ said in the Sermon on the Mount, then you will be the person who builds his house on a rock mass that will not be flooded away by the windstorm that is going forth. Now, another very interesting thing that I've seen happening recently in the last year or two is that with all the economic failures happening around the world, including the USA, that men are turning to gold and silver, hoping that money will buy them out of the calamity that they too see on the horizon, a complete economic collapse in the world. And so the price of gold and silver has skyrocketed, and people are buying gold and silver in the hopes that that money is what will save them in the near future. So I personally believe that that is a prophetic circumstance where men will put their trust in their money to save them instead of putting their trust in Jesus Christ and obeying what he said to do. So I'll read another scripture which speaks to this. This scripture is in James in the New Testament, chapter 5, and I'll start in verse 1. Listen very carefully to what it says about gold and silver and its ability to save us during these last final part of the days, where people can see a calamity that is in front of them. Listen carefully. Come now, you rich men, weep, howling over your miseries that are coming upon you. Your riches have rotted, and your outer garments have become moth-eaten. Your gold and silver are rusted away, and their rust will be as a witness against you, and will eat your fleshy parts. Something like fire is what you have stored up in the last days. So I find it very profound that all over YouTube and the rest of the internet, you can find those rich men buying up gold and silver in the hopes that that is what is going to save them from the incoming calamity that they themselves perceive. But it doesn't only mention that in the New Testament, in the book of James. It also speaks to this gold and silver in the Old Testament. And so I'll read another scripture. So here we go. It's in Ezekiel chapter 7, and I'll start in verse 19. Listen carefully about how gold and silver is going to save you. Into the streets they will throw their very silver, and an abhorrent thing their own gold will become. Neither their silver nor their gold will be able to deliver them in the day of Jehovah's fury. And so, if you are giving your consideration to these things, and if the calamities that are going forth amongst all the nations throughout the entire world are the start of God's fury, then gold and silver is not going to help. And so I do find it incredibly profound that you'll find so many people on YouTube and the rest of the internet saying, buy gold and silver because that's what is going to buy your own salvation out of the things that are coming upon the world that they themselves must see. Because if they don't expect a calamity to be coming or imminent, then they wouldn't be buying up so much gold and silver, and the price wouldn't be skyrocketing like it is today. But I would ask all those people who seem focused on gold and silver as something that will save them out of that impending calamity that they all perceive, I'd ask them to read those scriptures and reconsider their own judgment. So to wrap up this video, I'd like to ask the audience whether they are giving their consideration to all these things. And do you think this is God's fury starting to go forth throughout the entire world? And what is your expectation? Or do you believe that there have been calamities throughout our entire history and that nothing's changed? Go ahead and put your comment down below. I'd be very interested in your opinion. And so, in closing, thank you for watching the video, and keep watching what's happening in the world. And if you're asking yourself the question, what next? Then perhaps you are indeed giving your consideration to these things.